Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're coming to you with a webinar today on building the right team from interview to new hire. So we're trying to bring you some really interesting content during this time. As you can see, we're all in our houses as well. But we really want to bring you some valuable content that hopefully you can take away in action. So thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. I've just popped in the chat there that you can ask questions throughout using the questions tab at the top on the right hand side there. So if you do have any questions that pop up into your mind, we can answer them at the end, in addition to the ones that you've already submitted when you registered. So without further ado, I will introduce today's Treatwell team. So we have Talya Avram, who is Head of Talent Acquisition at Treatwell. So she's definitely the right person to be answering some of these questions for you. I feel like I can say that because she hired me.
I was going to say, Dorothy, I mean, I hire the best.
Oh, stop. And then we also have Madeleine Raynel, who is our Managing Director for the UK and Ireland. Madeline manages an extensive team within Treatwell, so she's definitely one of our most experienced people managers and has been at Treatwell for 10 years. So she is the perfect person to have on this webinar today. So I will hand over to Madeline.
Thanks, Dorothy. As Dorothy said, we really have kind of wanted during these really unfortunate lockdown periods to try and stay engaged with all of you, our partners and people from the wider industry, and just make sure that we can add a little bit of value and hopefully give you some great content to be thinking about for your business. I know that hiring and recruiting might not be on everybody's mind at the moment, possibly quite the opposite. Obviously, we've had a really difficult year of it, and we've seen teams shrink, people kind of move out of salons and start working for themselves. But I know that lots of us are kind of looking to the future now. We feel like there's a little ray of light at the end of the tunnel, and we're ready and raring to go, and possibly thinking about building our businesses back up either in 2021 or beyond. So the first webinar in this series is really about the kind of recruiting and hiring phase. And as Dorothy will talk about later, there is another webinar to follow this, which is more about kind of managing the team that you've got now and getting the best out of people. But we wanted to kind of start at the beginning, obviously, of people and making sure that you have the right talent within your business. And we love this quote because we think it kind of sums everything up, that people are not your most important asset, the right people are. And that's something that I think we really hold dear here at Treatwell. And a lot of what we'll be talking about today is from a Treatwell perspective, very much from a business perspective. There are so many great industry bodies out there who will give very specific sort of hair, beauty, wellness advice and pay scales and all of that kind of thing. But what we felt that we could really add, hopefully for you, is a busy business. As Dorothy said, I've been here 10 years. I joined when we were eight people in the company. We're now up to around about 600 people across Europe. So we've been through a lot of growth. We've done an awful lot of hiring. We've brought on some brilliant talent and we've retained that talent. And hopefully that's kind of what Talya and I will be able to give you a bit of a flavour of today. So in terms of what we're going to cover, I know that Talya is going to take a lot of this. She's our queen of talent acquisition, so I'll let her have a quick run through the kind of content we'll have today for you.
Yeah, so definitely a lot to get through, and we'll go into much more depth about these topics in the coming slides. But as an overview, we'll start with knowing when to hire, and then we'll move into how and when to find this talent, preparing for the interviews, which is a massive one when it comes to really making sure you've got your best foot forward and really identifying that talent, best practice interview techniques to help you guys prepare, making your final decision, because ultimately at the end of this, you want to know, yes, this person's going to join my team and be successful. And then we'll do the Q&A and answer any additional questions you have or the ones submitted previously. So yeah, getting stuck into it then, knowing when to hire. So this is super important, isn't it? Because you don't want to just start hiring at scale when it's not the right time for your business. You want to be making sure that it's going to be adding value to your team. So it's important to look at that data and your salon's performance. I mean, Madeline, Connect, I know, offer a load of tools and reports to help us look at treatments and everything like that. Would you mind going into more detail?
Oh, if I can get myself off mute in time, yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think it's exactly that, just to build on what Talya said. It's really important to make sure that you make the right decisions at the right time for your business. I think especially in this period, there's going to be a lot of change, I think, and Connect or another booking system that you're using should have all of that data that gives you that kind of insight. Which treatments are really starting to trend? Is there a lot of kind of demand for something, and you're finding that certain therapists or stylists are fully booked with a treatment and you haven't got anyone else who's able to provide that? That would kind of indicate that it's the right time to sort of think about extending their hours or bringing somebody new into the business. Just to add that as well, there is a lot of information within Connect about what's already happening within your business and those patterns that you can see in when people are booking and what they're wanting to book. But actually, if you're a Treatwell partner already, probably your best asset here is your Treatwell account manager, because they have got so much what we would call demand data, which is really kind of insight on what's happening on Treatwell as a wider platform. And we can sort of tell you what treatments are being most searched, most booked in your areas, and we can try and help you really match with the demand. And if you're missing out on potential bookings and clients that you could have had in your salons, that's the kind of insight that we can give you. But as Talya said, it's very much about matching where there's an opportunity for you to bring somebody else in potentially to provide treatments that people are really looking for, that there is a demand at the moment.
Definitely. And I mean, that's something we do at Treatwell quite a bit. It's not a matter of just kind of bringing in as many people as possible, but looking at where those gaps are in our business and how we can add value to supporting us grow. And then moving on to something which is really important to me, which is promote from within. I think, you know, often you've already got some great talent within your team, people that you've built strong relationships with and trust, and being able to give them the opportunity to develop. Sometimes if your employees have had much experience behind them, perhaps they've already got some skills that aren't being utilized within your team, or perhaps there's an opportunity for them to develop and you can give them a bit of support in their learning so that they can support your business more. So it's also really important to consider, okay, I have this need for my team, but is there somebody internally that can support me before you start looking externally? Because that also will give them a lot of trust and feel really rewarded from within. Then sorry,
Madeleine. I was just going to say a really good example of that, obviously, as a kind of hair or beauty professional, you're probably thinking, well, I can't just kind of promote my beautician to start doing haircuts or whatever it might be. But there's a lot of other examples of that if you're thinking about your social media strategy and really wanting to kind of do more from a marketing perspective, you might find that actually somebody who's kind of joined you and is a kind of fairly junior a member within your team might actually be really skilled and have a lot of kind of ability to take on something like social media. So it's not even just kind of, can they take on more treatments? Sometimes that is the case, and people do want to go and learn a new skill, and you know, there might be somebody who can do nails right now, but they might be wanting to go and do a training program to learn something else. But you can think outside the box a bit there as well, that you might have other kind of gaps within your team that somebody within could help fill.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of goes on into, like, we've already touched then on how you can dig for areas of opportunity by looking into that data more and what sort of treatments are becoming popular within your salon or also within the market. Maybe you're seeing your competitors getting a head start on something and you want to pick those skills up and take some of that market. And then the resource gap, which we've also already touched on. So should we move on then to the next slide? Great. So how and where to find talent? And, you know, it's such a competitive market, isn't it? Whether it's your salon, whether it's Treatwell, it's a war for talent, and you see it all the time. So being able to really showcase your business, find the right people is super important. And there's many channels you can go down. I think naturally we always think about job listings, which I think is absolutely crucial. You've got your Glassdoor, your Indeed, Read, etc., LinkedIn, they're all incredible. But then you can go much further beyond that. Word of mouth, I mean, that's key. And that ties in super nicely with industry events. So if I know right now, we're obviously not kind of meeting up face to face, but there's many online industry events. There's lots of kind of different things going on out there. If you can get the word out there about your salon, your business, then hopefully that means you can get more word of mouth out and start talking to people that are looking in the market. Social media is a huge one, especially for Treatwell. We've got, a really strong social media presence, and it's important to show our business, how we're working, our culture, and really putting, all the roles that we have available out there to be shared. So I often, when I'm advertising a role, I'll talk to the team and I'll say, hey, can you share this across your social media to really get it out? Because of course you've got your network, but that can be enhanced further by your team's network as well, and really kind of get the word out about roles happening within your team. I mean, Madeline, anything to add there?
No, I mean, I think I would only really back up the industry events, and I think so many of the kind of industry bodies and partners for our industry have done such a good job over the last months of bringing communities together. I know at Treatwell we created a Facebook community group which has got over 5,000-6,000 professionals and sole traders and people who are kind of employed, every spectrum in there, really connecting and talking to each other. But so many of the other industries have done that as well. Like Creative Head, for example, took their Salon Smart event entirely online. At the end of last year, they're going to do the same again this year, or possibly have a hybrid. So it just because we've kind of had to go virtual for a little while doesn't mean that you can't still make those new connections and get your brand out there, and also start to get connected with other people who might be looking to employ or to be employed. So definitely kind of spend a bit of time joining those communities and building your network.
And Treatwell also has the Facebook community, which I imagine would be a great place to find people and share more about your business and any open roles.
It is a great place. So we created the Facebook group, which is called Behind Closed Doors in the Hair and Beauty Industry, at the start actually of the pandemic, when we realised that we were kind of going to have to go dark for a little while. And it actually kind of leads me on to the next slide, because what we found within that group, we really kind of, that's a nice segue, Talya, thank you. It kind of, it gave us a real kind of finger on the pulse as to what the industry was thinking about and worrying about. And there was obviously just a lot of kind of people seeking advice and kind of wanting to kind of find a bit of solidarity and understand what the situation was. But one of the really big themes that was coming up was actually people saying, I need to leave my salon and I need to go and rent space in another salon somewhere, or I'm considering going home based, but I'm not too sure what that would look like. There were people who unfortunately had lost their jobs. But on the flip side, there were people who potentially had employees who were leaving the city or the town that they were living in, and therefore they were going to have either space to rent or a new kind of hire to be able to make within their salon. And we actually just thought that that was such a good opportunity for Treatwell to try and connect all of that talent together and give people this forum to kind of come and either seek employment or seek people to bring into their business. So Connect with Talent, which kind of does what it says, was formed. We launched this I can't remember how many months ago now, but it's become a really active space, and it's for everybody, whether you're looking to rent a space, whether you're looking to find space within a salon, or you're kind of wanting to get hired or to hire a new team member. And it's across the whole industry. So it's everything from hair, beauty, wellness, a little bit of spa even. But definitely check out connectwithtalent.co.uk, and that's where you'll find lots of available jobs and you can put your listings up there. It is a free service. This is something that we wanted to do just to kind of help the industry to connect rather than as a money maker, so nothing to worry about in that respect. And this is just a little bit of a flavour of some of the jobs that you can see have been posted on there at the moment. There's everything from kind of assistant manager, so that real kind of team lead managerial role, and working beauty therapist, through to senior hairstylists. So hopefully a really good platform for the industry. So it's one that we would encourage you to check out if you have got a vacancy to fill or you're currently looking to find something. Onto the job spec. Talya, you are the queen of helping all of the managers within Treatwell of writing a really, really good job spec to attract the right talent.
Yeah, hundreds of job specs in my lifetime, thousands possibly, but yeah, we put together actually a template for you guys, which we'll share after this webinar to give you more detail. But essentially what you want to do is have a really nicely structured, clear and concise job description to make sure that you're putting your salon in the best light and the role in the best light. It's a competitive market. People are going to be looking at so many job descriptions, and you want to make sure that your salon's standing out and that, yeah, you're making sure that you're offering a very open and honest portrayal of the role, but also while still making it look super attractive. So a few things that we've included, and it's all in the spec to take away with you after, but things like putting the candidates in the heart of the job themselves. It makes them kind of envision themselves in the role, as opposed to saying the successful candidate, which often we kind of tend to use, and it can be quite cold, a little bit less direct, and yeah, it just kind of makes them feel a bit more outside from actually connecting with this position. You want to give them a bit about yourself and a little bit about the salon, the history, what you specialize in, what makes you guys special. Because there are many salons in the market, you want to make sure that you show what makes you guys different from those ones, and really kind of show what will stand out to them. So thinking about your culture, the team environment, the treatments that make you guys a little bit unique, anything like that will really make sure that you guys are looking above and beyond the rest. I've looked at a few job descriptions online for the salon industry, both hair and beauty, and honestly, you guys with the spec, I think will really stand out and look super professional while still really attractive.
Just to add to that as well, Talya, I've spoken to a kind of couple of salon owners lately who have, I know it's a really common problem in the industry that sometimes you put a job advert up on Gumtree or whatever it might be, and you get so many people through who are just not actually a good match for you, or sometimes even qualified for the job. So I think your job spec, like, of course, you absolutely have to cover the basics and put your minimum requirements on there for what NVQ or what kind of qualifications you need people to have. But as Talya said, like, I do really think it's an opportunity to try and kind of sift out some of those people who wouldn't be a good match for you. And I've found over the years, as I've tried to concentrate less on kind of talking about just to say, well, the kind of person that I would want, but more about the kind of job and the kind of role and the kind of manager that I am even, it's a really good chance to kind of make sure that people are applying for jobs that they actually want, rather than just speculatively applying to a load of things. This is your chance to really kind of nail down what it is and that somebody's going to be doing. Of course, you've got to be clear about that, but also give them a good flavour about the kind of environment they're going to be working in as well. I think that's really important.
Definitely, hugely so. Especially, yeah, I mean, having had many applications before where it's not always been the right fit, you start tailoring and tweaking to make sure that you're definitely getting the right kind of requirements and aspects of the role that are essential, but also, yeah, sharing who would fit into this type of culture. So for example, for us, we really need people who can be adaptable and ready for, shifting in terms of what goals we're working towards, and being able to really share that's going to be something a part of the role is important, because that sort of person will fit within our culture nicely. So then preparing for the interview.
Gosh. I used to be so scared of interviewing.
You know what? I still am.
I used to be really, really frightened of that. Actually. I knew that's. Yeah, it's not. It's a funny experience, and I think when you're kind of going to bring somebody into your business, like your business or your team, whatever it is your baby, and you really want to get the right person who's going to work well with you, but you want them to like you, and you want them to come and work with you as well if you kind of like them. So I totally understand kind of interview nerves, because I think after how many thousand possibly I might have done by now, they've definitely kind of subsided, but I certainly had them and used to be really kind of like scared about whether somebody was going to like me and want to come and work in my team as well. So just to kind of acknowledge that, I think that's a perfectly normal way of feeling, especially if you're new to it, but it gets a little bit easier. But I think kind of as we've called out on here, like the first step on that is make sure that you review the CVs, because you do get a lot of applicants, and certainly in this current climate, you will be probably being flooded. If you've got a chair to rent within your salon, or you've got somebody to bring in, you're probably going to be getting absolutely loads right now, and that's a sad state of the times. But it's also a great opportunity for you as a business owner that there are amazing people out there. So hopefully you're going to be able to find a great hire. But I think really committing the time, and I'm incredibly lucky that I tend to have Talya and other people to help me do this, that really spend time sifting through those CVs and kind of looking out for things that you really like about something that makes them stand out because they've shown a bit of their personality, or they've already kind of like just totally worked at a salon or a business that you're already really impressed by. That can count for a lot. But on the flip side, also look out for the things that would be warning signs for you as well. If you've seen a lot of kind of moving around. That's always one that kind of raises a bit of a red flag for me. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, and sometimes if you really like the rest of the CV, there might be really valid reasons for it. Obviously someone relocating and that kind of thing is fine, but if you kind of see somebody who is, you know, within London and keeps changing salon or renting a different space every couple of months, not for COVID reasons, I think, you know, that can kind of raise a bit of an alarm, and it might be a sign that you're not going to bring in somebody really reliable or stable, and that person is not kind of maybe for you. But it doesn't always mean you shouldn't interview somebody if you like the rest of what's on their CV, but you should just make sure you make a note. I'm a real kind of scribbler, so I'll have the kind of CV printed off in front of me, and I write questions everywhere, and I underline things I really want to dig into, just as a prompt, so that when I get in that interview and get really carried away just chatting to someone, as I tend to do, it just brings me back to something that I might have wanted to dig into, and just make sure that I've got an okay answer on it. And I think as we kind of probably will get onto a little bit more, but write those main questions down and think about what they're going to be. Sometimes it might be something that's very kind of experience based, and you really want to dig into that gap in their employment or why they changed. But sometimes it's more about, you might see from their CV what their real skill is and what their training qualifications are, but you might not have got a real kind of sense of how they will be within your team dynamic, how they treat clients, whether they're going to have a really great retention rate for clients. So there might be some real stuff that you want to dig into to make sure that you give them opportunity to tell you something that maybe they didn't think to put on their CV. Something that's helped me, because I am a real kind of rambler, and Dorothy will attest to this from her interview, but I tend to just get in a real kind of chat with people, especially if I like them. I really kind of just chat to them and learn. And it's great. There's a lot to be said for kind of that very informal kind of environment, and I think it shows who you are, and it brings the best out of the other person as well. But I do think it's important to have a little bit of kind of structure and flow within that industry, within that interview, so you don't kind of let somebody go and then think, oh my gosh, I actually didn't check when they'd be available, or check whether they have, might not be a problem at the moment, but I didn't check whether they've booked a month-long holiday to go somewhere. You just kind of want to make sure that you do kind of keep yourself on track for what you want to do. And then the last one, actually, I'll let Talya talk about this, because this is something that we introduced in Treatwell a little while ago, and it's been really successful. And I think that actually a lot of you will already do this because you're wanting to see their technical skills. But Talya will tell you a little bit about why we introduce candidate tasks, and I guess the value it's brought to our process.
Definitely. I mean, it's something that I absolutely love including in every interview process. And I think it's something we've done across all the roles that we have at Treatwell, whether it's sales, account management, a data engineer, they will have some sort of task. And it's great because you're putting the candidate in a situation that's relevant to the role. You can go through a CV and talk a lot about experience that they've demonstrated in the past, and that adds a lot of value, but seeing them in the situation firsthand and how they react in a scenario that would actually happen in your salon will give you such a good indication of whether this person is right for the role, in terms of both skills, but also in terms of how they communicate and collaborate and work with a team. So it completely comes down to the task and what you set out. For example, if we're talking about an account manager at Treatwell, we're talking, we set them a task that focuses on how can you help a salon and their business really reach their full potential in digitizing, but it depends completely on the role itself. I'm setting a role at the moment that is completely different, completely numbers based, so it comes down to the position and setting a situation that's going to be super relevant. But you can also not only just set a task, but then you throw spanners so that you can see how they adapt. So let's say you set the task that they have to welcome somebody into the salon and it's a reception role, then perhaps it's a matter of then having a bit of an angry customer join, and then how will they behave in that circumstance and react to that situation, and then that customer calms down, but then something else happens. So really kind of throwing them different circumstances that could actually happen in real life to see if they're the right person for the role.
I think they're really great examples, Talya, because like I said, the technical skills are just a given. That's something that you need to kind of make sure you're assessing them on. But I hear from so many people, especially I think when you're first kind of adding people into your team or you're renting space within your salon, but ultimately it's your brand and people are going to represent that. We all have this kind of worry that you can interview somebody and they'll be great and you know they can technically do the job. But if they go in to do a whack and that treatment door shuts, you don't know what's happening, what the interaction is like between that client and that therapist. So I think it's a really good idea during that interview process to make sure that you go beyond just the technical skills and you actually, as Talya suggested, maybe give them some real life examples of a difficult client, or a client who's asking for a discount, or a client who's not sure whether they're going to rebook, whatever the scenario might be, but just kind of get a sense of how kind of comfortable and relaxed they are at dealing with a client, and whether you think that really fits with how you would want to handle that situation, because that's what indicates that they're going to be a really strong team member for you, or they're going to work well within the salon and kind of be a good representative of your brand.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just going up back to the review the CVs aspect of this page, one thing that we've done at Treatwell that's really helped us, and if you are getting loads of candidates and you're not really sure who looks right or who isn't, something that we've included in the application form is a question to see what their thinking is like, if they actually make the effort to respond to that question and give you some sort of interest into your business or into the industry. So for example, at Treatwell, in our application form, there's the question of why should a salon go digital? And people can choose whether they respond or not, but it is such a strong indication if they do. It shows that they've made an effort, they've often done a bit of research on us, and they can personalize and go into as much detail as possible. So all of these signs to me show somebody who's got absolute ambition and drive and really wants this role. So if you are experiencing that volume of CVs, that's also something that you can introduce. Cool. Should we move on?
Yep.
Best practice interview techniques. Madeleine, is it me or you?
Oh, I think it's a bit of both of us. We both do a lot of interviewing, so we can do this one. Do you want to kick off, and I'll jump in if I've got anything to add?
Yeah, sure. So I think the key one is ask open questions. It's so important. You don't want to have a yes/no interaction, because you're not going to get the most out of the candidate, and you're not really going to know whether they've got the skills or the kind of attributes that you're looking for. One thing that I often tell my hiring managers to do is think of behavioral questions or situational questions. So behavioral questions focuses on times when they can demonstrate a certain experience or a certain skill that you're looking for. So for example, can you share with me an example of a time that you had an angry client? While a situational question is about putting them in the shoes of a certain circumstance and seeing how they would react. So the task often gives you an indication of that, but you can always go deeper and ask further situational questions to see how they would respond. So we've given a couple of examples there that you can have a look at, and yeah, definitely look into those types of questioning. I think, Madeleine, that's been quite successful for our hiring at Treatwell. Have you found it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something that I kind of learned along the years as well, about those sort of really open questions, because the more you give people space to talk, the more they will tell you. And that's when you really kind of learn about their character and whether they're going to be a match for you. And one question I always ask people, and I probably asked Dorothy this, but I actually always ask people what kind of manager, what kind of line manager or leader do they want to work with that would help them work best? Because what I'm really wanting to know is whether I think they're going to be a good person to work with me, because I know what my management style is. I know that I don't want to kind of have to set someone their tasks every day and keep reminding them of the things they've got to do. I want somebody who's going to be really independent and who's going to kind of bring solutions to me rather than problems. But rather than kind of maybe ask a leading question, which would be, do you like to be micromanaged, or do you like to have freedom? Someone's going to tell you what you want to hear. But if you kind of ask them what kind of manager do they work best in, they'll think about it a bit more, and they'll hopefully tell you what it is that you wanted to hear, and you'll realize you're a good match. But if somebody says to me, for example, well, I like to have a manager who I have a morning check-in with, and we run through everything I've got to do that day, and we do XXX. For me, straight away, I just think I'm not going to be the right manager for you, because I don't have the capacity or the anything else to be able to do that. So that for me is a kind of way of sifting out people that in practice wouldn't wouldn't work very well within my team. The examples and the questions will probably be very different for you, because you might, and this is where it goes back to really thinking about what you need from somebody, and what kind of that job is going to look like on the salon floor for someone, and making sure that you can kind of come up with those questions. But for me, this is absolutely the best part of the whole process of having those questions and really starting to get a sense of who somebody is. Another big red flag for me is when anyone in an interview is very critical about their last place of work or the last manager they had, because for me, it's just whether or not you gelled with somebody, and you know, you might feel that you could have a better fit somewhere else. If you then go into an interview and say to a new prospective manager, I really didn't like my last manager, because it's quite a negative thing to bring in, and as a hiring manager you immediately think, oh gosh, they might be a difficult employee to have. Whereas if they had the professionalism to sort of say, actually, I learned a lot in my last job and I got a really great opportunity from it. I don't think it was the perfect cultural environment for me, and we didn't work that, you know, there was something about it that wasn't quite right for me, but I really appreciate the opportunity I had, and it's led me here. Then that's a really positive way of saying it. So the more questioning you do, the more opportunity you give somebody to actually answer your questions without you having to ask those very specific closed questions that would lead them. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think another really important aspect when it comes to questioning is giving that equal opportunity to all your candidates. So if you are interviewing more than one person for a role, you want to give them the same opportunity as the candidate before then. So what that means is really making sure that the questions you ask one candidate is aligned with the same questions you ask the other. If you give these candidates completely different questions, you're kind of setting them up to not really have a clear comparison and not really being able to benchmark who's going to be the best for your team. Of course, you need to adjust and tailor your questioning based on their CV. So like Madeline was talking about, if people have been moving around, you want to get to the bottom of that. But there should be always some core questions that everybody is asked to make sure that they really will fit within the environment, within the skill set that you're looking for. And you shouldn't be changing or altering that too much. Otherwise, you're not really giving them a fair opportunity. And yeah, it's not a great experience also for you to be able to really understand who's right for your team. And then, of course, be honest. It goes both ways, doesn't it, when it comes to interviewing? You're interviewing them to find out if they're the right fit for you, but equally, they need to do the same, and they need to feel like this is the salon I want to work at. This is the role that I really want to do. So you need to be able to be completely open with them about really the expectations of these roles to make sure that they are going to feel comfortable walking into the salon and starting on their first day. If you say you'll be doing all these amazing responsibilities and taking on everything within the salon that we have to offer, but then they come in and they're doing, you know, very much minimal of that, that's not going to set a great impression for them, and they're most likely going to leave earlier. And then you have the concern of turnover and having to rehire, and that's, you know, a lot of time and resources from you then spent. I think we've experienced that a couple of times at Treatwell, and we now know that it goes both ways, and you have to really be truly transparent about what they're going to be coming into, while of course still remaining attractive about what is exciting about the role. It doesn't mean you can't emphasize that, but yeah, creating a clear picture.
I think that's so important. And as you said, Talya, like I don't think we've done it, and I've done it perfectly over the years, definitely, because I think sometimes when you are, like I said, when you're interviewing in kind of early on, you get so excited and so nervous that you want someone to love you that there's a tendency to kind of oversell and overpromise maybe. And I think actually that, again, in the next webinar, we'll talk a lot more about kind of managing team, and a lot of that comes down to developing people and letting them feel like they can kind of grow and want to keep staying with your business. That starts and finishes with really kind of clear expectations about what they were coming into and what that job is. And it's great to kind of talk about longer term opportunities. And if you want them to potentially get involved in your social media, that, you know, that's brilliant. But if they think that they're coming in as a beautician to then become a social media manager in 3 months, that might be completely unrealistic. So it's most important to kind of say what your clear expectations are. And if you need them to sweep the floor and you need them to clean their station after every client, which you probably do unless you've got a cleaner in the business, that's a a really important thing to call out, because they're not going to come in, like Talya said, in that first week and think, oh God, hang on, I thought I was going to be front of house doing this kind of role, and actually you've got me sweeping up and making the tea. So I think just kind of that real honesty, let them trust you, and then you'll trust them as well, and it's paid back a million times over. Yeah. Move us on to the next one. And again, Carly, I've kind of covered the manage expectations one, but Talya has been a real advocate of this within our business, about bringing a colleague into an interview. I used to do a lot of interviewing alone, and sometimes you'll think, but I am the hiring manager and it's me who's got to make the decision. But what I started doing is bringing through one of either my team leaders or just a peer. So if I'm employing a new account manager, sometimes I'll bring in another account manager into that interview process, because it helps to kind of have someone else's opinion. Sometimes you find when you're interviewing as well that you're kind of listening and engaging, you're kind of talking to them so intently that you don't always get a chance to take notes or to then go on to the next question that popped into your head quickly. So it's just nice, I think, to have another kind of pair of hands, a pair of ears in there with you. And as Talya says, 2 perspectives are better than 1 as well. And it's really good to sometimes hear from a peer, because I think that really helps you on the cultural side of whether someone's going to be a good fit for you. I don't know if you want to add anything on that one, Talya.
I think you nailed it. But yeah, it's definitely something that it takes a while to adjust to. I think naturally people are a little bit more comfortable interviewing alone, because like we mentioned, interviewing is pretty scary for people who aren't doing it every day. But then when you feel like, oh, here's my, my direct report listening and observing how I'm interviewing, it can put a bit of pressure on. But once you let that kind of initial fear go away, it's actually just a huge benefit for you to have that extra lens in terms of the interview and help you make that decision, because it's so hard to make and you want to get it right. Cool. So the final decision, the final countdown. Is it me or you, Mads?
I don't know. You go and I'll join in.
Always the case with slides. We need to start putting our names at the top. But yeah, the final decision is obviously extremely crucial for you, and making sure that this person comes on board and is the right fit for your team, for the role, for your business's success. So you've got to put your business first in this and make sure your biases don't get in the way. I mean, a good example of this is sometimes, if you've seen somebody is from a certain neighborhood that you're from, or they went to a school or an academy that you're familiar with, and you've got a relationship with, sometimes you can naturally be a little bit more enticed by that type of profile because it's more familiar. But set that aside, really think about the interview, about the skills they've shown, their portfolio, if that's relevant, how they worked in the task, because that'll give you a much better indication than some of these biases that we have trapped in our heads. So that's something that's been a bit of a learning curve, but it's really important to keep in mind when you're making this decision. Have feedback ready. That is something I couldn't highlight more. It's so important for both the candidates that you're making the offer on, but also those that you choose not to move forward on. You want to have really good feedback, because this, word of mouth, things get out. A bad interaction and a bad rejection of an application can lead to not many nice things being said. So you want to make sure that actually they come out of it being like, I didn't get the job, I'm disappointed, but actually they gave me all this great feedback and I really want to work there in the future. So when you are interviewing, that's where that note-taking that Madeline was referring to comes in handy. You want to be looking at how they answered questions and how, they could have improved in that interview step, or if they did something really good, acknowledging that too. It's so great making the offer and being like, you blew us away because you did this presentation and you showed all this incredible thinking behind your research and showed a lot of initiative in terms of how you approach this project. Things like that will really make a candidate be like, oh, they're excited about me and they feel really, passionate about me joining. So feedback is essential. I mean, Madeline, do you have anything to add on the feedback front? Because I know you're actually one of my stars when it comes to giving good feedback.
Do you know what though, Talia? Like you've pushed me a lot on that over the years, because sometimes I think when you're really busy and you get loads of people through and you give up all of your time to interview, it's a bit of a slog, right? If you're meeting people kind of back to back for however long, trying to find someone great, you find the right person, and I kind of just have a tendency to go, brilliant, Sarah's the right one, let's hire Sarah. And actually it's something that I've become more and more conscious of, and Talia's really pushed me on that. Actually I think as somebody who has a job to offer, we've got a real duty to try and help this industry, especially at this point. And there are so many people looking for jobs and going to be disappointed because they're not getting the job that they go for right now. The single best thing we can do, aside from being able to employ them, is to give them really kind and really constructive feedback about how they might be able to get the next job they go for. And if somebody's got just a fundamental gap and they applied for a job that wasn't right for them, it's important to help them narrow down that search and say, actually, you didn't have this qualification and that was really fundamental for me. Hopefully they didn't kind of get through the get to interview stage if they didn't have that kind of qualification. But also if they just weren't confident at how to deal with a client, that when you set them that task, they really kind of fluffed it and were put on the spot, that's something really constructive you can give someone to go and work on, and it will set them up for hopefully going to be successful in the next interview that they do go for. So I do really think that it's worth a bit of your time. And like Talia said, if you've taken those notes, it's only kind of a few lines to somebody or a quick kind of phone call to them, but it will just give them something that makes them feel an awful lot better about the fact that actually they've been rejected and they haven't been successful, because they've got something really positive. They know what you did like about them, but they also know what they can go and do to prepare to kind of close that gap for the next interview. And I know that sometimes it's a difficult feeling having to give somebody a no when you know that you did like them and they really want to work with you. So it makes it an awful lot better if you can try and give them a little bit of a nugget as to how to go forward as well. So yeah, I would definitely back up what Talia said on that one. It can feel a bit of a, God, have I got time to do this? But honestly, it's really the right thing to do for you and for them. And I've had instances where I haven't been able to employ somebody at that point, but actually they've come back to me later and been successful for a job about a year later. And I'll remember them. I remember that I liked them. I remember what they didn't possibly have at that point. And if they've gone away and developed those skills or got stronger at something, it's brilliant being able to say, yeah, now's your time and come and work for me. So yeah, it's a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think that also leads into making sure that you take your time and you really consider those applications, and that comes into the feedback. You really look at the feedback that you have for these candidates to make sure that you're really considering who you liked, who really fit within the role, who would fit within the team, all these kind of important features for you. Sometimes I know people feel a bit rushed to hire, especially if things are busy, if there's a gap in your team, and that's of course important and something to take into account. But what you don't want to do is just hire the person who's the fastest available, or hire the person who can meet with you first, because then you're going to risk not getting the right person and going through that all again a few months later. So really considering your options when it comes to who you're hiring is essential. And that means that you have to be prepared to make that offer and have the right thing in front of you. I think the worst thing is when you kind of call a candidate and you want to offer them a role because you like them, but you don't really know what you want to offer them, and you start going into negotiation at that point. So you want to take your time to consider what you're offering them, what that salary is, what that start date is, what will be included within their role. Obviously, this should have already been touched on and the expectations set, but it's good to kind of confirm that with them at this stage to make sure that they know exactly what is being offered to them. You don't want to go into a massive negotiation at this point. Naturally, you should be already so excited about them joining. So starting the negotiation period, which can sometimes take weeks if it's, really tricky, that can be difficult. So yeah, having that all prepared beforehand will set you up to be able to make that offer and know that they're going to accept. Anything to include in your experience there, Madeline? We've made plenty of offers together now.
We have. No, I think you've said it really. And I think the bit actually I'd more just go back to is the taking your time piece, because I've made very real mistakes in that I've just kind of thought, and I'm kind of talking from a team perspective here, and I have quite a big team, and there's a lot of work to do. And when you have gaps in that team, it puts a lot of pressure on the rest of your team that you're working crazy hours, and it gets really tricky. So I've definitely felt under pressure before to hire quickly, just to take the load off other people. And actually, it's probably been the biggest mistake I've done, because your team morale and the dynamic of your business is so impacted if you bring the wrong person in, that I'd actually rather be under more pressure personally and ask more of that of my team for a little while longer to get an amazing person who will come in and stay with your business. Because it sounds like a very kind of brutal thing to say, but I almost would have the philosophy of kind of hire slowly and fire quickly, because you need to take your time to find the right person and make that brilliant. But also, like, don't keep bad people. Like, of course, if it's somebody who is just struggling and needs more coaching and culturally is really great for you, yes, you invest your time coaching them, of course you do. But if you actually just have somebody who really is potentially damaging your business, I'm very much you have to move quickly in that perspective. And you know what, I totally agree. I've just seen Amy pop up in the comments saying sometimes I think I'm too picky, but it's my name above the door. I totally agree with you, Amy. Like, and it's what I said before about it's your brand, and you close that treatment room door and you don't know what's happening. So you need to trust that person, and you need to really feel confident in who you've hired that is sometimes taking on your clients. Like, it's your baby, it's your money, it's your name above the door. So yes, sometimes you can feel under pressure and you're working long hours yourself and asking your team to be more pushed. But really, I believe in hiring well. And I think sometimes that means hiring slowly.
Okay.
Straight to a Q&A. We got there quickly.
Brilliant. So we're popping into our Q&A section. There's been a couple of questions asked throughout the webinar, but not loads. So we've got some some questions that you guys have already asked that you put in when you registered for the webinar. So we'll just pop through these, and then we will carry. I'm just looking at the chat. I feel like I'm on some kind of cool YouTube channel. And then we will go through the other questions as well. So the first question is, what is the best way to work out a pay scale and to actually really understand how much you should be paying your staff?
I can take this, and Madeleine, feel free to jump in. I can give it from a Treatwell perspective and what I've had to do, because salary benchmarking is a massive part of my role, and making sure that we're paying our employees fairly and well in the market is absolutely important to us. So often, sometimes we're creating new roles and we don't really know what the market average is, and there's a lot of research that needs to be done. Of course, there's still a bit of ambiguity when you're going out to market, because unless you're talking to people and they tell you exactly what they're earning, which is very unlikely, you're not going to have a clear picture of their salary. But what you can do is look at job descriptions that are already out there in the market. And a lot of them actually feature what the salary for the role will be. So I did do a bit of research. I went on Indeed the other day and looked for a hairstylist role, and I saw that a lot of them had an hourly rate. And you can start benchmarking and seeing what different salons have to offer. You can, if there's lots of salons in your area, I would definitely suggest kind of looking at ones that are super similar to you, so ones that are offering the same treatment in the same area, so that you can get a much more clearer depiction of what that looks like. But what I generally do is create a spreadsheet, put each of the salons or each of the businesses that I'm interested in, the role, what the title is, and then the salary bracket, because usually it's a range, so I'll have the low and the high. And then that way you start kind of getting together research and pulling that information to have a much clearer overview. Things like Glassdoor do offer salary ranges. I don't know how relevant it will be for some roles in the hair and beauty industry, but certainly for your receptionist or social media positions like that, you can definitely see what other businesses are offering. If you do a little bit of search in their search bar, you just go hairstylist, for example, click down to salaries, location London, it comes up with a range of options, and that's been able to really help guide us with some of the salaries we offer at Treatwell. Madeleine, anything on your end to add to that?
I think you've answered it very much from a kind of Treatwell business perspective, which is great. I think, you know, there's a million sources out there for the industry as well. So I really would direct people to the National Hair and Beauty Federation. They've got a lot of kind of guide on that. I think some of it you probably do have to be a member to be able to access. But I guess this kind of goes back to the sort of industry, community and network as well, that what I've really genuinely loved, I think, about our industry over the last months is that we don't really have this very kind of competitive attitude towards each other, unless it's literally the salon down the road that really is your competitor. I think COVID has kind of brought the very best out of our industry, and that we've all really come together to kind of share advice and support with each other. So I'd also recommend that if you're struggling to know, you know, how you should be hiring and kind of paying, rewarding for a certain job, there are communities out there, and there are so many other salon owners who will happily give you their advice as well. So pop a question in behind closed doors, any of those kind of community groups, people will give you their best advice as well. This is definitely one where I'd say we're kind of we can talk to you from the business sense about making sure you can afford someone and what your plan to kind of pay back that hiring cost is and stuff from a business perspective. But from an industry perspective, I think I would definitely kind of look at someone like the National Hair and Beauty Federation or the online communities to just do that benchmarking piece as well.
Some great advice there, thank you.
And then
the next question, I'm reading them out even though you can read. How to keep your staff happy for their loyalty? Is it all about pay, or is there anything else that we can do to kind of retain staff?
Oh, I'm passionate about this one. So I think the first thing to say is, like, of course, pay is important. Like, you know, we all have rent or mortgages to pay and cars to run and whatever else, you know, our costs are. So of course you've got to get to a baseline of pay that people are confident and comfortable to be able to kind of manage their bills and live the life that they need to live in. But it isn't all about pay. Like, it definitely isn't. And I can say that with a lot of experience. So I think at the busiest point, my team has been about 125 people. And genuinely every one of those 125 people have different motivations and different things that they really care about. So I have people in a sales team, for example, who, I have to be honest, often their primary motivation is going to be about pay. And it isn't just about their baseline pay. It's about whether they can earn bonuses and whether they kind of have got these incentives and competitions that kind of really play to their kind of ability to their desire to kind of win and do really well and be rewarded for it. So if that is somebody's primary motivation, there are ways of putting performance-based rewards in there as well. So rather than just giving someone a salary increase, it can be linked to their retention rate, it could be linked to their retail sales. There's all kind of different ways of thinking about making sure that you give opportunity to people to earn more money, but to do so in a way that your business is not kind of having to pay out without them bringing in that value to you. So that's definitely something to think about. But by getting to know your team and really kind of investing in doing really good one-to-ones with them and asking them about their career aspirations and what makes them happy and what their kind of drivers are, you'll learn a lot about what the things are that you could do to kind of really make them feel happy and content and want to stay with you. And I've had everything from people who want to kind of learn new skills and people who want to kind of have more responsibility within a team to people who've been very open with me and said, actually, I want your job. That's where I want to get to. And I know you're not going to go anywhere, but how am I going to get to a point where I kind of learn some of the skills that you've got? And it really is about their personal and professional development. So I think as long as you invest that time to kind of get to know your team really well and understand what their drivers are, you can put things in place that will definitely make them feel happy and content without just having to throw money at the situation all the time. But it's about having those conversations and understanding. And for me, it's mainly about development and progression. People want to feel that they're learning new things and they're having opportunities to get exposure to things that they hadn't had previously. And you as a manager or somebody who's kind of bringing them into your salon environment have a great opportunity to do that just by investing sometimes a bit of your time. Sometimes people want your time more than they want your money, honestly. But it's kind of different for everyone. So you need to have those chats.
Yeah,
completely agree with that. I think one other thing to add, and it's just a small one, but it's around also when you first hire somebody and you want to make sure that they really kind of get invested in the team and the role. It's great to make sure that you put in place some good onboarding for them, just so they understand processes, systems, how things are working, how they're connecting with their team, because those first 3 months will be crucial to kind of making sure that you're setting them up for success and helping get that connection and loyalty that you're after.
Yeah, definitely. I was onboarded virtually with Treatwell and they did a grand job. So that just goes to show. And I'm super enthusiastic about it also. Definitely onboarding is key. The next question is, what would you choose, character or skills?
They're both so important, aren't they? We might have different opinions on this, Madeline. I mean, I think it's important to consider both. It's not one or the other, but it is kind of a way up dependent on the role. I think you shouldn't, bring somebody into the business who is the wrong character, who is the wrong attributes that you're looking for. You want them to fit within the team and the culture, but if it's a very senior role, you cannot ignore the fact that they need to have these hard skills and these certain kind of experiences to be successful. So you want to get the balance right. It depends on the position, in my view. If it's a junior role and you have time to invest and develop them up to be into the position that you need, then great. I would 100% pick character. As it becomes more senior, you've got to get that balance right between the two. You shouldn't probably though ever really have to compromise between one or the other. Madeline, how do you find this question?
I would answer it very, very similar to you, actually, Talya. And I think you're completely right. It's a little bit like the pay, that of course there's just a baseline. Somebody has to be qualified and skilled to do the job that you have available for them. But I think my answer has been different at different times of my decade at Treatwell, and also depending on the roles. So there've been times where honestly I've had roles that I've needed to fill, and I've needed people who have skills that potentially I don't even have to come into the team quickly and hit the ground running and fill a certain gap that I had. And then I've had periods where I would say I've had a little bit more luxury of, I've personally had more time to be able to coach people and invest in giving them the skills that maybe they didn't have, but I loved their character and I knew that they were going to be able to develop really well at Treatwell. So my answer has been a bit different at different times, but the main thing I would say is that of course you need the baseline skills, but you just can't have a bad character in your business. As Amy said before, it's your brand, it's your name. It's your clients, it's your revenue, it's all of those things. And I think skills can be developed. I don't think character fundamentally changes. So if you have any alarm bells going off about whether you trust somebody, whether that's trusting them to give a great client experience or a great haircut or a great massage, or whether it's trusting them to be able to close and lock the salon and empty the till at the end of the day, it's really fundamental that you have that baseline of trust. And for me, that comes down to character, not skills. So it's kind of impossible to choose one or the other, but I would say character, just to say, tips it for me, because I really think that skills, if you've got the time to invest in someone or someone else within your business has, you can give people those opportunities to get better at what they're doing if they've already got that very strong baseline. But you need someone who's got the right kind of attributes that you're really looking for. And it kind of goes back to my question that I ask people about what kind of manager they want. I at most times don't have the time to kind of really kind of like micromanage someone and set them the tasks. So I'm looking for attributes around people being really autonomous and independent and wanting kind of to develop themselves, and they want me to coach them rather than to kind of manage them. So I think it goes back to really thinking about what you've got the capacity to do and what's really important to your brand, your business, but also if you've got a bigger team, to the rest of your team dynamic as well, because you need someone who's going to complement that and make you a better business, not a fractious one, not a difficult one.
Yeah, some great points there, definitely. For me, just to add my 2 cents, it's probably just character tips it as well. I think you can't teach a good attitude. I think that's something that's innate. But skills are really important too. But if they come with enthusiasm, that's half the job done. the last question, there's another one on the chat as well, but on the slide here is, where is best to advertise for employed staff? We've obviously touched on this within the slides already, but I don't know if you want to reiterate anything, ladies.
I feel like both Madeleine and I are like, who first? I mean, I think, yeah, just reiterate the points. I think there's definitely probably job boards that are more applicable to your industry. So things like Gumtree, Indeed, I'd say would probably be better suited for finding talent and finding a volume of a pool. But definitely those community groups, those pockets, that word of mouth, referrals, social media, like all these aspects can truly bring in a much wider pool of talent than using just one channel alone. So it's about, yeah, kind of reaching that net as far as you can go.
Yeah, bang on. Check out Connect with Talent. So the last question that we have on our chat is from Amy. And she says she's really struggling with hiring at the moment. They've been wanting to hire for nearly a year, but obviously COVID has gotten in the way. Are there any tips for making them really stand out?
Shall I start first on this one, Talya, and then let you add anything? So I think hopefully a lot of kind of what Talya said in this about kind of the job spec and where to advertise will be useful, Amy. But the thing that kind of dawns on me is actually what you put in the chat earlier about your brand and you rightly being picky about it. I actually think probably the thing that will make you stand out, Amy, is you. And whether that's you personally or whether that's you and the brand you built and your team. So I think maybe when you're kind of posting your jobs and doing your social media posts and kind of making people aware of it, make sure that you really talk about you and what you bring. So actually, my counterpart who works over in our French office, when we were Wahanda back in the day before we were Treatwell, she always said to me that she really struggled hiring because Treatwell at that point wasn't very well known and she couldn't even pay the same as other kind of like roles, and she was recruiting for sales jobs at that point. And she actually said with no, she certainly wasn't being arrogant at all, that what she said is actually the thing that I've got to offer is me. I've been in this industry for 20 years. I can coach people, so I can bring in quite junior people and I can give them all of my experience and send them off as a finished article. And that's the thing that's unique to me. So she actually spent a lot of time with recruiters and kind of, before she even got to the interview stage, making people aware that actually that was probably the best thing that she had to offer. It wasn't even just about working at Treatwell and the pay was going to be great and the environment was going to be great. It was really about Morgan as a person and what she could offer to people. And I think don't be shy about that, Amy. If actually, you know, you've been in this industry for however long you've been in it and you're probably super talented and you can invest time with people, that's something to potentially shout out to people, because it might be the thing that is really personal and really exciting about your job and an opportunity working with you that might stand out from what someone else is offering, which is just 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, this is what you do. If you actually talk about what it's like to work with you in your business, that's probably the thing that will really cut through and get someone excited about working with you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I would also say that it's worth kind of looking at where you're losing talent at the moment. Is it that you're not getting enough people applying and you're really struggling to interview anyone? Or is it that during the interview process, you seem to be losing people to other competitors out there? Because maybe that's an indication on where you want to look for improvements within how you're hiring people. So for example, sometimes for Treatwell, it's that we would bring talent into the funnel and people would be, you know, really engaged with us, but then we've had too many interviews and they'd be meeting with too many people, so we'd lose them along the way. So looking at things like that to see what's going on and where kind of, I guess, those areas are that maybe are causing you to kind of miss out on some of the talent you're looking for in the market.
Yeah, some great advice there, definitely. I'd also recommend just popping onto Meetup, which is a website out there. And there's often a lot of communities on there that are from certain industries. And the more you network and the more you kind of put your business out there, I think the more kind of contacts you'll get in order to get new staff. So definitely recommend that. Thank you so much for all your questions today and for attending too. It really means a lot to us. And just to kind of sign off, we'd like to invite you to our webinar that's next Thursday. Different people, I'll probably still be here, but it's about getting the best from your team, managing and motivating. So obviously, if you've already got a team that you're happy with and you want to make sure that they stay motivated as possible, especially through these difficult times, we've got some of our kind of best people managers in Treatwell to give you some tips on that. So the sign up link for that is going to be in the follow-up email. So if you'd like to register, please go ahead. And we'll also be sending the salon job description template too, and we did have a couple of suggestions about doing renting a beauty room or a hairdresser chair from Sharon, so I will have to think about that, and any tips or templates we can come up with to help you, and email those to you afterwards. So thank you so much for joining us. We really enjoyed it. And thank you to Madeleine and Talya. You've both been amazing and given us some really useful, and even myself, some really useful tips for hiring an amazing team. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Hang in there.
Yeah. Sending love. Bye.
Bye-bye.